List of things that we see as the perfect hearing aid. For example, first of all, we don't want the thing to break down all the time. We want it to be so reliable that it's amazing. And I remember once in my 37-year career that this has actually happened. But then, of course, the manufacturers quit building it because they weren't selling enough of them through failure.
Well, just like our washer and dryers. Remember how durable and long-lasting they were? Well, the newer products, they're not lasting as long. And I think they're doing the same thing with hearing aids because they want people buying them more frequently.
Shocking reliability. Next thing is, we want these things to be less than $3,000 a piece. That price really limits the number of people who can do this. And on a happy note, it is true that hearing aids don't all cost that much. We're talking about the top end. People often say to me, you know, computers have gone down in price dramatically, but actually they haven't. If you use your computer primarily as a typewriter, it's true that the price has gone down next to nothing. You can get one of those for $120. But each year, PC Magazine puts together what they call their dream machine, and those things cost over $10,000. So it is true that there are $700 hearing aids out there, and it's true there are $3,000 hearing aids out there, and it's true that there are $120 computers, but it's also true that there are $11,000 computers out there. So price is a consideration, certainly. We want hearing aids that can do whatever we need in terms of amplification, whether you have a little tiny hearing loss or a huge hearing loss like Nikki and some of the folks in this room. We want it to be able to fit all degrees of hearing loss equally well. Super hearing ability for everyone. We don't want the things to whistle, and we'll talk more about that. We want to be able to repair them without having extraordinary expense or a lot of time without you having a hearing aid. We want these things to be able to connect, for example, to the loop system in this room. Russ here and perhaps Sherry there in the back right now is listening to this transmission wirelessly because this little white antenna around the room is transmitting a signal that goes right into their hearing aids, and they could go outside this room, close the door, and still hear the presentation because their hearing aids are their radio receiver now, and they don't need to wear any device. You know, sometimes if you go, for example, to the LaSalle Stewart Center at OSU, they'll have you check out an FM receiver. Well, that was okay back in the 80s, 70s, 60s, 90s, even up to about 2005. But those days are over now. If you have to have some other device to do wireless stuff, you got a problem with the technology you're getting. Finally, no, not finally, there's a lot more. We want this thing to work with Wi-Fi systems. How many of you have a Wi-Fi system at home? Okay. Does anybody not have a Wi-Fi? Okay, so 2 of you don't. Well, imagine, though, that your hearing aid could pick up Wi-Fi signals. For example, you go to Starbucks, you could use it there. But more importantly, what if theaters had them? What if all the playhouses had them? What if all the conference centers had a Wi-Fi connection, and all you had to do was go to your phone and put in the secret passcode that they give you, and your hearing aid would immediately receive those signals through the PA system. Even when you were in the restroom, you could hear the presentation. That would be state-of-the-art. And we'd also like a hearing aid system that would work with not just one, but a whole bunch of microphones if you needed them. And we would like those hearing aids to be rechargeable. And we got some good news about that we'll be discussing today. Because typically now, hearing aids with all the features they have in them are eating up batteries about every 5 to 6 days, which means you'll spend about $40 per hearing aid per year in batteries, but more importantly, you got to be changing the things all the time. We would also like you to be able to use your hearing aid with any device that had an audio output. Any device that makes sound, we'd like your hearing aid to be able to receive that sound wirelessly and give you the best hearing possible, even when you're not near that signal. We would like something to fit in your ear that's affordable. The piece that goes in the ear has been a problem for the last 127 years that they've been making ear impressions. And that technique, sadly, really hasn't changed that much in 127 years. And I can't think of too many things in the medical profession that haven't changed really that much in 127 years. We would like to have the ability to make changes in your hearing aid remotely. For example, let's say Sherry calls me on the phone and said, I would like my telephone setting, but could you add a setting where I can hear not only the telephone, but I can hear in the room at the same time? They call that an MT setting. And we could say, sure, hang on, it's coming your way without her ever leaving the house. Remote programming. We would like these devices to be able to interface with a medical miracle called cochlear implants, which allows people who have no hearing to suddenly have lots of hearing. But hearing aids and cochlear implants don't play well together in many ways, and we'll talk about that. But there are some good bits of news about that on the horizon. And finally, we'd like these things to do a little bit more than just amplify sounds, because in the consumer electronics world, there are devices now called Fitbits that fit in your ear, that can measure your blood pressure, your heart rate, the number of steps you've taken. It can store your audio books without being near your phone. It can store music in your hearing aid. It can make measurements of your blood sugar levels. Why should hearing aids be confined to just amplifying sounds? And we'll talk a little bit about that. So, let's get to it. We're going to take a look at each one separately, starting with Nikki's favorite one, reliability.
Reliability is the number one thing for me, because without my hearing aid, I cannot hear hardly anything. I can't hear anything. I can hear some vowels, maybe. I can hear a dog barking, the doorbell ring, maybe, depending on the doorbell. So without my hearing aid, I'm not functional. I would not be up here today if I didn't have my hearing aid.
So when it breaks down, you can imagine she's off the air, period. That's all there is to it. So breaking down, it's kind of like when you buy a car and you think, wow, I really like the looks of this thing and it goes fast and I think I'm going to get one of these. But then you discover about in 10,000 miles into it that you're between Salem and Corvallis and it's dead. And there you are on the freeway on a rainy day with the cars driving by at 75 miles an hour, splashing water up on you, and you're stuck on the freeway. And funny fact, a lot of phones don't get any reception between those two areas, so there you are, hoping for a good Samaritan. Reliability is really much more important than probably anything we're going to say after this.
Yeah, because I only have one ear. I'm completely deaf in this ear. There's no hearing aid that will work on this side. So it's really important that I always have a functional hearing aid with me and on my ear. Without my hearing aid, I can't work, so reliability is, again, a first. All right, Ron, talk about price.
So the next thing everybody says to me is, why are they so darned expensive? Well, the story is that they are. If you look, the green line is the cost of living index, the light green. The dark green is the actual price charged. So they're factoring in cost of living, essentially, into the price of hearing aids. And you can see it's sort of kept up with the 3% 3% per year cost of living increase, but it has actually slowed down a bit, not a whole lot, but a bit in the last few years. But here's the thing. They are expensive, and if you talk to the manufacturers, they'll say, well, the reason they're so expensive is that they're so improved. And yes, they are. That's really true. My dad's brother wore a body aid and with wires that ran from this thing into his ears, and he could hardly hear anything with it because it wasn't very powerful, strangely enough, as big as they were. The early body aids were not very powerful. So we've come a long ways because Nikki's hearing aid is this big, and it's probably 1,000,000 times more powerful than the one my dad's brother wore with that thing strapped to his chest. So they have improved. But here's the thing. The VA gets these hearing aids for $400. What she's wearing, they get for $400 each. Well, that's pretty nice because we pay over $2,000 each for these things. So here's the problem. The VA has figured out a way to get really good stuff for virtually no money. How do they do it, you ask? Well, hearing aids are expensive except for to them, and here's why. Because they control 21.15% of the hearing aids sold in this country. And the manufacturers are dying for them to put them on the VA approved list. So you have to figure that even at $400, they're making enough money that they want a piece of that action. And because of their huge purchasing power, they can negotiate much better prices with those manufacturers. But wait, you might say, that means that the rest of us are buying 80% of the hearing aids, so we're 4 times bigger than the VA. So why are we not getting 4 times better deal? And the answer is, because we're stupid. Our organizations have not really seen their way clear to making a bulk purchase option for the members. We thought this was a good idea, and there was an excellent presentation last year at the Academy of Doctors of Audiology where Dave Smriga showed very clearly that if you would all get together here, just the people in this room, we could negotiate a price close to what the VA is doing just based on the people sitting at his meeting. Now, there probably were 200 people there, but those 200 people on average do 20 hearing aids per month. That is 20 times 200. That is 4,000 hearing aids that we would be buying in a group every month at $4,000. I know you can get a $400 hearing aid. That purchase option, just with the people in that room would have done it. Not the 3,000 that are members of the Academy of Doctors of Audiology. Oh no, just those 100 and some odd people that were in the room. So, my point is, we are idiots. And they got together, and this is why I don't sit on committees. They got together with the steering committee of the Academy of Doctors of Audiology and said, this is one of our top 5 recommendations for this year. This is one of our goals. So this year we're going to do 5 things, and one of them is going to be, we're going to talk about this group purchase option. And that's just what they did. They talked about it. And then they decided, well, we're not going to do it, because we already are buying these crappy hearing aids from a group called EarVenture, and we're going to stay with that. We're in the hearing aid business, all right. We already are storing them. We're already dispensing them. We're doing all that, but we're not going to get the good ones from the good manufacturers. We're going to use some little boutique manufacturer that doesn't have any idea about how to make hearing aids. But we wrote them a letter. To whom it may concern. We are the Oregon Association for Better Hearing. For 32 years, we've tracked the hearing healthcare evolution. We've watched with interest as a group at Johns Hopkins reported favorable outcomes with personal sound amplifiers comparable to a $2,500 hearing aid. Funny story. Ashley and I, my assistant over here, we saw someone that had exactly the hearing aid that Johns Hopkins used for testing this week. And we said, say, you happen to have the hearing aid that Johns Hopkins says is no better than things I can buy online. And I had already bought the things online that Johns Hopkins wanted so well. So we programmed the hearing aid so he could hear using the $2,500 hearing aid he already had. And then we took those personal sound amplifiers that Johns Hopkins group was so fond of and put them on him. And the difference was he couldn't hear 0% versus 60% score. And I'll grant you, a $2,500 hearing aid, you'd want to be able to understand more than 65% of speech sound, of words in sentences with background noise present, but it still makes you pretty functional at that level. But by contrast, he couldn't hear anything with those personal sound amplifiers that Johns Hopkins was so fond of. Anyway, we reviewed the article whereby Dr. Humes and his colleagues at Indiana University showed that a consumer decides model where you self-diagnose and self-treat yourself was just as effective as state-of-the-art, best science diagnostics and rehabilitation procedures. We have a review of that on our DVDs. If you'd like one, you can take it home and listen to our review of it. We've attempted to replicate both of these studies using patients with moderate hearing loss and found that when using best scientific practices, a $2,500 hearing aid dramatically outperforms both the Humes pre-programmed hearing aids and the recommended personal sound amplifiers from Johns Hopkins. This is not to say we're not interested in better pricing on hearing aids. Several of our group members have tried the EarVenture hearing aids that they already are dispensing, only to discover they're much too feedback prone, and we can't, when we try to achieve an appropriate correction for the individual's hearing loss. So we want to reinforce to you that you need to reconsider this group purchase option. Which brings us to our number 3 thing, super hearing ability. Trust me on this, the personal sound amplifiers recommended by Johns Hopkins will not give you that. Nor will the self-diagnosis and self-treatment that Dr. Humes and his colleagues at Indiana University came up with. And I just today sent out the final draft of that article that we're going to publish in our national journal, where we tried to replicate these studies only to find that they were way off base in terms of those being equivalent. And these, by the way, are the 6 companies that control the world marketplace of hearing aids. They are, in alphabetical order, Oticon, Phonak, Resound, Signia, Starkey, and Widex. You may have heard of Beltone. You may have heard of Miracle Ear. They're all owned by these guys. So I say don't buy hand-me-downs, particularly these other groups, the Beltone, New Ear, Costco, and Beltone? And Miracle Ear. They lock their software so you can't get into it and fix it. And trust me on this, they don't program hearing aids very well over there. We did a study on that, and Nikki will show it to you in just a bit because it's up here. So we want super hearing ability, and we want real hearing aids. We don't want any of these boutique things that somebody's whooped up or things you can buy online. And hearing aids are not all equal in their ability to provide sufficient amplification. Here's a curious little story. Every single one of our product testers wear the same hearing aid. Isn't that amazing? I mean, there must be 600 different hearing aids they could choose from in the world marketplace. They've probably looked at, 30, 40, 50 of them anyway. But they all wear the same one, because they are not all equal in their ability to provide good amplification without squealing. Fortunately, there's been a lot of improvement in the old days, and then by that I mean 10 years ago when digital hearing aids were really new, they were all squawking away uncontrollably. So anything that didn't squeak became our preferred hearing aid, and the first one that ever really got it right was Widex. They had something called the
Diva.
Thank you, the Widex Diva. And everybody in our group had one of those because they were digital. You could really adjust them to the individual's hearing loss, and they didn't squawk, but everything else out there on the market did. Well, fortunately, we're not in that situation anymore. They've all gotten a lot better, but some are a lot better than others, even within that paradigm.
So here is the speech sound we are talking about for amplifying the speech that you need to hear. This is an average hearing loss that most of the patients that we see in our office have. The red line is the right ear and the blue line is the left ear. And that yellow speech banana is all the speech sounds that you need to hear in order to understand speech. For this individual's hearing loss, they can only hear these speech sounds here. By contrast, all of this is outside of their range of hearing. They're only hearing, what would you say, 15%, Ron?
But that's about right.
15?
Ashley's the one, the good estimator, because she's always the one that calculates. So that's probably about a 15.
Yeah. I would say that they can hear only 15% of speech sounds without a hearing aid. When a hearing aid is properly programmed, you will be able to hear many of these speech sounds again.
Can I say just a word about that? But you may not like it.
Yeah.
That's the curious thing about this story. You may not like it. We were just talking about this before the meeting started. You'd be, if you look at the difference in hearing aid uptake levels between Europe, where you get hearing aids for free, and U.S., more people are using hearing aids in the United Kingdom and those industrialized countries that provide them for free. But only about 1 in 3. The other 2/3 either say, I'm hearing just fine, I don't need them, or I wouldn't be caught dead in those things, or they just don't know enough about hearing aids to go get them, or they haven't really identified that they have a hearing loss, which is odd, but I see people all the time. We saw a guy the other day. Every word I said, he had his hands like this so he could hear me, and he had to have me yell at him, and I repeated everything at least 3 or 4 times, but he said, I hear you just fine. Well, under those conditions, if you're willing to yell, get really close, and you don't mind holding your hands up over your ears, yeah, he did hear just fine. But he left believing he heard just fine. 1 out of 3.
So here's an example of an appropriate hearing aid program for this type of hearing loss. The red line and the blue line, again, is the hearing loss. Your right ear is on the left and the left ear is on the right. This is a graph that prints out after we do a hearing aid fitting. It shows us exactly what the hearing aid is doing inside your ear, and I'll talk about that a little bit later of how we get those results. Unfortunately, most hearing aids are not properly programmed to provide hearing of those speech sounds. A lot of audiologists or hearing dispensers do something called the manufacturer's fit, which is where they put the individual, the patient's hearing loss into the computer, and then the manufacturer decides, okay, this is how much amplification they need. Then you put the hearing aid on their ears and say, can you hear me now? And they may hear a little bit better than they heard before, so they may say yes, and then they may or may not teach them how to use the hearing aid, and out the door they go. And these hearing aids are dramatically too weak for them. And we did a study on 179 hearing aids. These were patients that came in the door. We didn't solicit them. They just came over from other clinics and just said they needed a new hearing test. And we evaluated their hearing and evaluated their hearing aids, and we found that all of them were way too weak. And here's our article here. Do you have something?
Ashley has been with us for 2 years, and she commented the other day, I've never seen a proper fitting. Now, in 2 years' time, sitting there every single day, you would have expected that somebody would have come with one, but you'd be wrong. Actually, there was a 2.8% of those 173 hearing aids, 179 hearing aids, 2.8% of them were within gunshot range of where they should have been based on the individual's hearing loss. But that's not a particularly good number. And I was contacted by one of the editors of the Audiology Practices Journal, who said, I want to interview you about this article. And he said something very strange to me, because he's internationally, actually lives in Canada, where they have socialized hearing aid provision for people. He said, those numbers don't surprise me. And I said, well, that's sad, because I was surprised when I saw them. But he said, oh, no, they don't surprise me at all.
So here's our proof. This is what we found for what the hearing aids were doing for all those patients that walked in the door. If they had a perfect hearing aid fitting, it would be at that 0 line there. And you can see every single frequency that goes from low frequencies to high frequencies was dramatically too weak for every individual hearing loss. Hearing aids need to be programmed better. They need to be reprogrammed using real ear. So make sure wherever you go, you ask if they do real ear. And you'll know because they'll put a little tube in your ear and you'll see it later on. And it kind of tickles. And then the hearing aid goes on over it. And it tells you exactly what the hearing aid's doing for you.
Let me tell you a funny story. Go back to that picture. Back in 1943, there was an article published by Hallowell Davis and his colleagues at Harvard who said every hearing aid would be just perfect for every person if you could just increase the amplification by 6 loudness levels per every octave. And you know, when I look at that and think about the hearing losses that people had, that's pretty much the Hallowell Davis fitting right there. So we're reliving 1944. I think Hallowell Davis would be proud to know that his prediction is coming true, that this is how today in 2017 hearing aids are being fit.
So there are 2 parts to understanding speech with a hearing aid. First, you have to choose a hearing aid that does not squeal very easily. Second, you have to be sure it's properly programmed to your hearing loss. You don't want to be with the people on the left. You want to be with the people on the right. Proper hearing aid programming is the use of real ear measurements. How it works is we have a machine called an Axiom, or there's other ones like the RM500 or the VeriFit and many others. And that's the machine that we use in our office is the Axiom. The probe tube, that tickly tube that I talked about earlier, goes inside the ear, and then the hearing aid goes on over it. And then we have a speaker that plays a pink noise type of sound. That's what it's called. It's called pink noise. And then the hearing aid hears exactly what the pink noise is coming out over the speaker, and that microphone that's inside your ear is hearing what the hearing aid's giving you, and then prints out a graph like this. So this is the person's hearing loss on the right ear, and that green squiggly line is the full correction target there. And you can see that the right ear is completely at full correction. That person's going to do really well under most conditions. Same thing on the left ear. There with the blue line is the hearing loss, and the green line is what the hearing aid is doing for you. Nothing else will achieve this goal. What was that number? It was like 4 trillion.
Oh, it's way more than a trillion. There are trillions of different combinations that we can set for your hearing aids, because when you program a hearing aid, you program for audibility of soft sounds, then you program for audibility of medium loud sounds, then you program for protection from loud sounds as measured by your own individual uncomfortable listening levels. And within that, there are anywhere from 8 to 16 little channels we have to use, which gives you 4 times 16 or 3 times 16, 48, plus you have to also set the maximum loudness no matter what happens, and you also have 16 of those. So 64 different little boxes that you have to program correctly. And within each of those boxes, there are about 20 choices. So if you take 20 and raise it to the 64th power, you get an amazing number. And that is why you can never guess how to get a good fitting. If you're not using this device, you'll get exactly what Nikki was showing you with all those hearing aids that came into our clinic that had not received real ear measures.
Ron, feedback control.
You know, I really, if we had all of our product testers sitting at this table today, I should have had them all talk about this, because I'm sure Russ, I know Sherry, I suspect you, Nikki, have worn hearing aids that every time you opened your mouth or were chewing or laughing, they would squeak. or when you'd walk by a door jamb, or when you would put up a hood or put your hat on or whatever. We've all seen hearing aids like that. You were going to say?
Yeah, I remember when I would go to school and do my student picture, and they would ask me to smile, and I'd get a smile, and my hearing aid would go, ee, while I was doing that. Very obnoxious. And if someone would give me a hug, I would always try and make sure they would go on this side, but every once in a while, they go over here, and then they would get the loud screeching over there. It hurts my ears, hurts their ears, and a little embarrassing.
Those days are over, my friends. Now you can hug Nikki all you want, and there will be no screeching, at least from our hearing aids. But, as I said before, not all hearing aids are equally good at doing this. The companies vary greatly in their ability, especially for severe hearing losses, to keep those things quiet. But one of them comes to the forefront by far, and that's Resound. And I'm not a Resound spokesperson. In fact, if somebody would build a better hearing aid, I'd leave them tomorrow because I'm not particularly fond of them. But boy, do their hearing aids resist feedback, and I can put incredible amounts of volume in those hearing aids, and Russ can wear his hat without any screeching. He can wear his motorcycle helmet without screeching, even with his severe hearing loss. That's what we're looking for. And don't get a hearing aid that can't control screeching. And there's those other 5, some of them are very whistle prone, even though they've improved. And then there's the ease of repair thing. First of all, everything breaks down. I don't care what you buy. They all break down. And the more sophisticated they are, the more things there are to go wrong with them. More simplistic hearing aids of the past broke down less. That was nice. But they didn't do everything that we're doing right now. Russ couldn't keep that little thing in his pocket to receive every electromagnetic signal that's out there in this country because that technology didn't exist. So there's one more thing that can go wrong, and it takes a wireless receiver within the hearing aid, and that can go wrong, and it eats up more batteries, and the feedback control mechanism eats up more batteries. So for all those reasons, there's a lot more things that can go wrong with newer hearing aids, and none of them are absolutely perfect at never breaking down. But there are certain styles that are way more expensive and longer to repair. And there they are, those custom in-the-ear things. Because what happens usually, as I say on the next slide, the usual reason that these things break down as you get earwax in them. Well, within the ear hearing aids, it's encased inside the hearing aid is where the loudspeaker is, and you can't get to it. So if you get earwax in there, the hearing aid's dead. Now, sometimes we can get it with our vacuum, but a lot of times we can't. And then you got to have it sent to the manufacturer. They got to break it open. They got to change the loudspeaker in the thing. And that, my friends, takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of time, at least 2 weeks, sometimes 3, sometimes even 4 if you're really unlucky. And you're looking at hundreds of dollars of repair on those things. Now, others can be fixed in a matter of minutes for, anywhere from $5 to 150, 125. So let's get away from those in-the-ear things. There's no upside to that. When they get broken, when they get plugged with earwax, and that happens to all of them, off they go.
A lot of patients, when they're looking for hearing aids, they want something that's invisible, that isn't noticeable, and that's why they gravitate to the other 3 on the left. But really, I've always found that those hearing aids make you look older.
Well, they're highly visible, in my opinion.
Yeah.
When I go to Hometown Buffet, that's where I do my hearing aid research, you can see lots of hearing aids. And at Hometown Buffet, as you look across to the masses, you'll see those in-the-ear things stick out like a sore thumb. I would argue that what she's wearing,
even with my hair up, you can't really see
is a lot less noticeable. And if it breaks down, it doesn't take so much work to get the thing back to you and get it fixed. Usually we can fix these things by just changing the loudspeaker on those 2 in the following fashion. There we are, pulling the loudspeaker off and putting a new one on, and that's all there is to it. And out you go the same day. And this one, the behind the ear, the old traditional behind the ear, the loudspeaker was built into the hearing aid way far away from the earwax, so those virtually never got earwax in them, and they were the most reliable of all. So you might say, let's just get one for everybody. Well, problem is they're a lot bigger. You know, Nikki's hearing aid is this big and way powerful. Those hearing aids are that big and they're less powerful, curiously.
Wireless without an intermediate device. This is me in 1997. I was 7 years old in first grade. In order for me to hear the teacher, I had to use this wireless system here. This is called the Contact Wireless System. It's also called an FM system. And this is the thing that I had to wear around my neck in order for it to receive a signal to my hearing aid. And then the teacher had to wear this device here, the microphone, and it would stream her voice directly to the transmitter, the thing that I was wearing around my neck and my waist, directly to my hearing aid. That way then, no matter where I was in the room, I could hear the teacher right in my ear as if she was right here. And it made my life a lot easier in hearing the teacher and understanding everything that was going on. What wasn't so easy is the other students in the class seeing a 7-year-old wearing a fanny pack, looking different. So luckily there are new things out now that you can do the same thing without all this stuff. Here is me now on the right with a microphone. This is called the multi-mic, and I can clip that microphone if I was still in school over there. I'd be able to just clip it right on the teacher, and it would stream her voice directly to my hearing aid without wearing all that stuff. It would just go directly to the hearing aid. So I'm really glad that we have something that's smaller and less noticeable and actually works better in further range without wearing all these things. However,
go ahead.
Yeah, and there's the microphone. You can see it circled when I'm holding there.
Here's a sad story. Colette, our other assistant, is getting her doctorate at City University of New York in audiology. They believe that unless you have a big Comtech FM system or similar, you won't be able to hear as well. So they never recommend those for school-age kids. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
It's not 1997 anymore, folks, and trust me, these little microphones work extraordinarily well, and we've demonstrated it all over the country. When we go to meetings, we always connect that microphone to the PA system, and now all these very severely hard of hearing assistants can sit in the back of the room and hear better than I do a lot of times.
Yeah, there's a little 3.5 millimeter adapter that comes with it, and you can plug it directly into a PA system. Russ is plugged into our PA system right now and is streaming both of our voices up from the microphone directly to his ears. You can also set it in front of the TV or plug it into the TV, laptop, and it'll stream directly to both of your hearing aids. But unfortunately, some hearing aid manufacturers still think that it's necessary to wear the stuff around your neck, or they have a little boot adapter that attaches to the back of the hearing aid, making your hearing aid even bigger than it really needs to be. And one manufacturer, Resound, figured it out where you could still have a super small hearing aid and regardless of the loss of hearing that you have, and be able to use all these wireless features. And we know better that we don't want these big hearing aids and lots of accessories that you have to carry around with you. If you have anything but the hearing aid for wireless reception, it is outdated. The next thing I want to talk about is Wi-Fi Direct. How many of you guys, I know we asked this question earlier, you guys have Wi-Fi in your house?
There's two that don't.
Yeah. And how many of you guys, when you go to the coffee shop or you go to the theater or the airport and there's Wi-Fi and you can connect to your phone using the Wi-Fi or the laptop, Wouldn't it be nice if you could just connect to that Wi-Fi and stream the airport speaker directly into your ears, letting you know that your plane is boarding? Or if you went to the theater and you need a little bit more help hearing the play or the movie that you're at, it would stream directly to your hearing aid using that Wi-Fi Direct. Wi-Fi is everywhere now. It should be integrated with the hearing aid. And you can see here how that would work. It would just stream from the Wi-Fi to the hearing aid, and you could get it places like theater, the airport, the train station, and at home with your television or computer. So that's something that I'm looking forward in happening here in the next couple years. I don't think they're too far off in doing it.
I agree.
The other thing is multiple microphones. Now, we talked about the microphone before, how I was able to hear the teacher. I would like to be able to use multiple microphones. So have one on Ron, have one on someone else so I can hear them, or even in a 10-group listening situation around in the table at a restaurant, I could have one microphone on one end of the table and the other on the other end. That way then I can hear everything around me at the restaurant, independent of all that background noise. So I would like to be able to use 3 of these microphones all at once. There is a manufacturer that did come out with a Phonak Roger pen, and it is capable of doing a multiple microphone system. And I did try it out, and it was great when it worked. It constantly became unpaired with each other. How they did it was they would pair the Roger pen together, and sometimes one of them would become unpaired or just would be unpaired with your hearing aid, and so it just wasn't user-friendly. I could see a lot of patients walking into our office constantly saying, "It's unpaired again, pair me back up." And it's not easily to pair. I had trouble with it. The next thing that we're looking forward to in 2018, it is kind of already here, the rechargeable hearing aid system. We don't want to be constantly changing batteries every time we turn around. When I use my hearing aid and use all the wireless stuff, the microphone, streaming to my iPhone, I get about 3 to 4 days on average if I do it a lot. If I just use the hearing aids alone and don't use the streaming so much, it's usually 5 to 6 days that I'm having to change my batteries. So with the rechargeable system, I have been using this for about a month now, and I just pop my hearing aid at night into that little recharging system there, and it charges my hearing aid. And it will last 24 hours on a single charge. I have gone every other day and charged it every other day. I end up charging it every night because it will stop working on the second day around 6 or 7 o'clock, and I want to continue using my hearing aid. So it is possible though to go every other day. These people offer this to all manufacturers, but a lot of manufacturers require you to buy a new hearing aid and won't retrofit their older hearing aids, unfortunately. And it's only available to the top of the line hearing aids. So if you just need a basic hearing aid and you don't need all this wireless features, that hearing aid will not be able to be rechargeable, unfortunately. But I'm looking forward to it being more accessible for those hearing aid users that just need the basic hearing aids. But in the future, this does seem like a viable idea for all hearing aids. A lot of patients who we see have poor dexterity, or just hard to get that battery in there. So this would be a great option. Even we have a couple blind patients that this would be really great for them.
In fact, they use them because they couldn't do the batteries, but they can find that little charger and put it in. All media interface. I want anything that makes sound to be in your hearing aids without having to go through too much. Now, Nikki sort of glossed over it, but when she gets a phone call, it rings in her hearing aid, and she just starts talking. Many is the time I've just seen her in there talking to herself to realize, oh, you're on the phone. You're talking to somebody on the other end, because only she can hear it, and boy, can she hear it. It's a beautifully clear signal. My other assistant, Carrie, who is a lifelong hearing aid wearer and very deaf, had never used the hearing aid until this came out. I had never used a telephone until this came out. And now, if you show her anything that is not compatible with her phone directly to her hearing aid, she won't even try it. She said, well, there's no point. I'm not going to give up my phone after 20 some odd years. So if it can't do that, she won't be wearing it.
Whenever I order new hearing aids or call the manufacturers, I'm constantly using my iPhone rather than using the landline, because I get a much better signal. It's a lot clearer, it's a lot louder, and I can understand the person on the phone a lot better. Next on our list, Ron, affordable comfortable earpieces.
This is a really pet peeve of mine. In the old days, everybody had to have a custom fit earpiece, because if you didn't, the hearing aids would squeal like crazy. And back in the beginning, this guy in 1890 made the very first ear impression. And really, the technique has not really changed that much since 1890. We still squirt goop in your ear. We wait for it to set up. Then we pull it out of your ear, we put it in that box, we ship it away, and then we begin waiting 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes 4 if there's a holiday. And they're expensive, and they don't fit very well all the time. Now, it's rumored that this is obsolete, Now we've got 3D printers. They can print these things right on the spot. But what they don't tell you is that it really doesn't work yet, especially the first step. Now, on the far left, you see a guy, will you point, thank you, scanning an ear. And what he's doing is he's got this little device that he's running around the ear canal, and it's making a digital copy of the ear without putting anything in your ear. Great. And then you take that digital copy and you put it into the middle piece, which is the software that says, okay, cut off the tip here and cut off these portions and then just make this for me. But that software is really sort of in its infancy. And then finally, you go over to the far right with that modeled software that you've created, a piece for the ear, and then that printer prints them. But the problem is you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars, and the thing on the left doesn't really work. They keep saying, oh, we're going to have it any time now. And they've been saying that for 6, 7, a lot of years.
5 years now. And every time you go up to the booth and say, hey, are you ready yet? Oh, next year. Next year we'll have it. It's always next year. Going to be the blue pal before we know it.
That's right. So here's the new way, but every time we try to buy it, it's not ready yet, and it's unaffordable even if it were. But at one time, so are CD players. My first CD player cost $1,000. Can you imagine that? It played one CD and it cost $1,000, and this was like 30 years ago. And televisions, remember how expensive they were, those new flat panels, you were looking $3,000 back 20 years ago. Well, now you can get them for $100. And CD players you can't even find because they're obsolete. So, yeah, these are affordable now, and I'm waiting for the day when we can get away from this 1890 ear impression technique. Things should move on. And we want all of that with a cost that's reasonable.
Next is remote programming. When you come into the office to have a new hearing aid fitting, sometimes you want to add some stuff, and maybe you find out that the battery alarm is too loud or too soft. Well, you could actually, with remote programming, you as the patient could send me a little message, and I would get the message that the battery alarm was too loud or too soft, or maybe you want a T-coil added, telecoil added onto as an option for one of your programs. You would type that message to me. I would get the message, and I would write you back, okay, I'll update your software. It'll come here soon. And go into your software on my computer and add a T-coil, adjust the volume for your battery alarm, and then I save it and send it back to you. Then you go onto your phone and you would click download, and it would download from your phone directly to your hearing aid, your new programming. So now you would have the battery alarm where you wanted it, and your telecoil or T-coil program active on your hearing aid without coming into the office or waiting for an appointment, because sometimes we're booked out a week. Sorry, Russ, you have to wait a week for that T-coil program to be active. Now you don't have to. You can do remote programming.
And I'm of the opinion, and I could be gloriously wrong about this, but I think that I can actually program a hearing aid completely without you present better than 97.8% of the hearing aids that are programmed out in this state. And the reason I say that is, if you'll recall that graph where we showed how badly hearing aids were programmed relative to your hearing loss, I think I can come closer to that without you ever being there. Now, there's some considerations I have, of course. What if you got earwax in your ear? You don't even need a hearing aid. You just need an earwax removal. You'd be surprised how many people. I mean, we probably do 20 of those a week of people who are plugged up with just earwax, and sometimes that's the whole problem. I remember our secretary came in and said, now this guy's really deaf. You're going to have to really yell at him. Yes, we did for about 3 minutes until we looked in his ear and pulled out a piece of cemented earwax that was about that long, and all of a sudden he said, oh, geez, I can hear. And well, that's right. It looked like an ear mold.
Essentially had an earplug in there.
So there is those considerations. But on ears that are clear, on people that don't have pathology, I am of the opinion I can program better than the average hearing aid in this state based on our previous study, and I can do it remotely. My plan, of course, involves Nikki's ear and mine. We'll do the feedback test on my ear for males, her ear for females, and we'll send that feedback controlled data into the hearing aid, and then we'll program using the individual's hearing loss, but on her ear, our real ear system to guide us, or if it's a male, on my ear to guide us. And I think I can come much closer than these data we showed you of poor fittings. I could be wrong.
And like Ron had already said, our next research project will test an idea we have for maximizing hearing without coming to our clinic. If this works, you could stay home and get a good hearing aid program.
People in Denmark could call us and say, could you send me a hearing aid program to me? I mean, it's the possibilities here are, you're looking at a bold new frontier.
Next is CI wireless compatibility.
CI is the term that audiologists use for cochlear implants. If you are so deaf that a hearing aid no longer helps you, this is where you go. In fact, studies have shown once your hearing loss exceeds 80 dB, 80 loudness units, you actually have a 4-time better chance of a good outcome with a cochlear implant. Now, it's a surgical procedure. You see up there above the ear, there's a little device implanted in the head. And then a wire is run down into the nerve cells for hearing to take their place, and it functions as an electrical ear for you so that you can hear these sounds electrically. And trust me on this, we've had panel discussions on this. The people that wear these are amazed by what they're hearing, totally amazed. My friends, I got some friends that went from 0% speech understanding to 90% speech understanding. Camille scores better than you do with her cochlear implants on the speech and noise tests. In fact, she's pretty much functioning as a normal hearing person now. It's really quite amazing. So this device is impressive, but there's a little caveat here. We just talked about what the CI is, but compatible means that you can use it with your hearing aid. You know, most people have a cochlear implant on one ear and a hearing aid on the other. Now, in time, a lot of cochlear implant wearers get a second one. But in the meantime, usually they have one hearing aid and one cochlear implant, but they don't play well together. They don't share all the features that the hearing aid can do. They're getting close to it, but they're not there yet. For example, the telephone, classic example. People that get a cochlear implant very quickly discover, I'm going to quit using my hearing aid ear on the phone. I'm going to use my cochlear implant ear. Okay, good, but why not both? Well, because nobody can do it yet. The cochlear implant companies have partnered with Resound, if you go to Cochlear Americas. They have partnered with Phonak, if you use the other two, which is Med-El and Advanced Bionics. But none of them allow you to listen with both ears on the phone yet.
I was talking to one of our reps at Resound, and they said that it's coming. They're hoping for 2018, 2019. There will be, of course, a new hearing aid that will be compatible with the CI, and you'll be able to stream phone calls directly to both the CI and the hearing aid, and also that remote control app that I showed you on my phone that will also be able to be controlled with both the CI and the hearing aid.
And FDA has approved programming CIs remotely. Mm-hmm. And there you have it. And that's how it would work. So you talk on the phone, both ears are getting the signal. Hooray. Then you would have full wireless function, but you don't right now. And finally, we want Fitbit. Why should hearing aids just amplify sounds? That seems rather limited. Why don't they store your audio books? Why don't they store your favorite music? Why don't they tell what your heart rate is? Why don't they measure your oxygenation level? Probably in this room, half of us have heart problems. We'd like to know what our oxygen levels are in our blood. Why not?
Why doesn't it say, hey, you've been sitting here for too long, time to get up and move around?
That too. Or, you've only taken 500 steps today. Get up and do some stuff. Why not? Because these devices exist. There's the Braggy Dash. It does that. But why not? Why can't hearing aids do that too? And, of course, answer your phone.
Sorry.
And one manufacturer, so what if they could do more than just amplify speech? Yes. And one manufacturer gave it the old college try, which is the next slide. But it didn't go well. Next slide. We spent a lot of time on the phone with them, and before doing that, a lot of time amongst ourselves, just trying to get those things to work, and never could really get it to work. And this, I'm afraid to say, is something of a recurring theme with Starkey. Starkey has bold ideas about wireless technology, but in the beginning they thought, well, let's make a universal wireless device that'll work with all hearing aids. We'll call it the Blue Pal. And for months and months and years, they advertised the Blue Pal in magazines. At their conferences, they would have a Blue Pal in a big glass case that you could go, and it was floor to ceiling. You could go look at one, and you'd say, could you take one out and let me listen to it? Well, it's not ready yet. Not ready yet. Year after year after year, not ready yet. Finally, they released it, and it didn't work, and they took it off the market within about 3 months. And I predict that this relationship that they have with Braggy Dash is going to be exactly the Blue Pal again, because they've gotten really quiet in their ads lately about this marriage between Braggy Dash and Starkey, and I predict they're not going to be able to get it to work.
Well, when we were at CES 2 years ago, we saw the Braggy Dash, and we asked, hey, can you make this work? We want to try this out. Oh, no, it's just either it was not ready yet, or the next time around when we saw them, they couldn't get it to pair, and they blamed that there was a lot of interference in the room because all these other Bluetooth technologies that are around us right now, that's why it's not working. Well, we finally got it in the office, 6 months ago, and tried to get it to pair to his phone, wouldn't do it. I tried mine thinking, oh, maybe it's because he has Android. Tried my iPhone, it wouldn't pair either. So there's something seriously wrong with those devices.
I've heard this story before. As I said, this is Starkey's wireless story. When I heard that Braggy had partnered with them so they could get more expertise on wireless connectivity, I thought, You chose Starkey? Because that was a bad choice. Resound, it's not that they're brilliant in terms of engineering of wireless devices. It is that when Sony got out of the wireless business, they fired all of their wireless engineers, and Resound hired them all. And that's how they got this edge. They said, we want to do something that nobody's ever done. We want an antenna this long that will receive even in-the-ear hearing aids from a long distance with these external microphones in your phone and everything. And they said, well, we think we can do it. And their first attempt worked perfectly. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I really have nothing bad to say about the way they've integrated their wireless stuff. It really works. And someone will come up with this Fitbit to hearing aid idea, and I can tell you who I think it'll be.
So to summarize what this ideal hearing aid could do, here's everything that we've talked about. Is any manufacturer close to doing any of it? Well, for shocking reliability, none of them meet that. For price, none of them beat that. If you want the top of the line, the wireless feature, they are expensive, unfortunately. Super hearing ability. Resound is able to do really loud volume. We can correct almost any hearing loss with Resound without feedback. Feedback control, Phonak, Widex, and Resound are really good at feedback control. Ease of repair. All of them are easy to repair as long as it's not an in-the-ear hearing aid. If it's an in-the-ear hearing aid, most of the time we have to send it in for repair. Wireless without intermediate device, that is Resound, that can do that, and Starkey. Wi-Fi direct, none of them can do this yet. It's something that we're really looking forward to seeing in the future. Multiple microphone systems, Phonak can do it. Rechargeable options, your choices for the rechargeable is Phonak, Oticon, Signia, and Resound, and Starkey.
Everybody with Widex, in
Yep.
other words.
All media interface, none of them can do that. Affordable earpieces, we don't have that option yet. Remote programming, the only one that can do that is Resound. And wireless compatible, and Fitbit. No one can do that yet. So we're looking forward to adding some of this to our list for 2018. And next year it'll be interesting when we meet in December to see how many actually meet all these criterias. And Ron, does that mean that we should all buy Resound?
Well, on the one hand, yes, but not for all those features. For feedback control. And here's the thing. I mentioned that, 12, 15 years ago, Resound actually came out with a hearing aid that was so reliable that when someone would call me and say it's not working, I would say, take off the little tube, run the pipe cleaner through it, and put it back on. And 99% of the time, they'd say, oh, that made it work. And that was that. Those were the good old days. But we've relived the good old days because we buy that same model reconditioned and sell it now at a discount because people like a reliable hearing aid, and it was a good hearing aid. It was, when I saw it the very first time at our national conference, I said to the Resound people, this will make everything else you make obsolete. And now that's about 70% of the marketplace. So that hearing aid, we still, we offer an entire line of everything, but there's reasons you probably don't want to use some of those others.
And the reconditioned hearing aid that we do is a very good option for patients who are buying hearing aids for the first time. They may not want to spend, $2,000 plus on hearing aids. the refurbished hearing aid is $900 per ear, and they're able to do really well with the hearing aid. There's no volume control. There's just an on and off switch, and it's something basic for them to use while they're getting used to having something in their ear and hearing again.
And they hold up shockingly well. Now, like I said, if you let me program any of those hearing aids all the same, you'll pretty much do the same with any of them, despite what the manufacturers say. But there are other reasons of reliability, of feedback control, that I would steer you in that direction. But as far as everything we've been talking about today, do any of you need all of that? Yeah. Russ probably does. He probably would use every single thing we described. Sherry would use every single thing we just described if it were in it. But that's not your average hearing aid wearer. These guys are not your run-of-the-mill hearing aid wearers. But wouldn't it be nice if all that were available? Well, we're getting closer. You know, we're probably at 70-80% of it now. So hooray. But next year, I'd like to be sitting here saying, and now all this is possible, and now we've got a new list of things we want to see happen. But we've come a long ways over these 32 years.